Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into Facilities in Focus. My name is Mackenna Moralez, and I am the managing editor of FacilitiesNet and your host of this podcast. We are continuing our season 4 theme of safety and security by talking about all things access control. Today, I am joined by Michael Gipps. Michael is a prominent executive and thought leader in security and risk management. He is the managing director of the Enterprise Security Risk Management practice at Kroll. Mike is also the author of It's Not in the Manual, Real World Leadership for Security and Risk Professionals. With its great mix of leadership theory, humor, and actionable insights, the book has been described as a must-read for leaders at any level. Mike has contributed to many publications, including FacilitiesNet, on topics related to the security sector, and I could probably keep talking about all his accolades, but I think we would run out of time. But I just want to thank you so much for coming on today, Mike. How are you?
I'm great, McKenna. How are you? It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I know I told you off mic that I am recovering from the flu. So I have been plagued with the flu that's traveling around southeastern Wisconsin. So I'm going to do my best today to try and mute myself for all the coughing or have our wonderful sound guys, Paul and John, edit it out. And I just want to give an apology for all listeners if I do happen to cough during the recording. It's not my intention. But
Well, you sound better
Paul,
than I do, so you're doing pretty well. Hmm,
please.
hmm.
But like I said, we are keeping up the theme of security and safety, and something that has always really intrigued me is access control systems. I don't know if it's because I did grow up in a relatively small town. Growing up, we never locked our doors. Like when we finally moved out of my childhood home, the landlord asked for the key, and my dad was like, I don't think I've ever had one. So it's great. My husband regularly has to remind me to lock our cars now, and it things have just so drastically changed, especially in recent years. But can you just explain why access control systems are so important?
Sure. And I'll tell you that when I grew up in New York, outside of the city, in a suburb outside of New York City. We didn't lock our doors either. We barely closed the doors. So it's not like, you know, you grew up in Wisconsin. It was that different from any place. Now you're a lot younger than I am, but a lot of us grew up with, we didn't think about, and if somebody stole something, it was kind of a shock, but so
Right.
there's a couple of reasons that access control is important. For one, it's to keep yourself safe, right? I mean,
Right.
especially at the corporate or organizational or office level, you don't want to let everyone in. You've got to make sure you have a duty to your employees, to your customers, to anyone who's there for their well-being, to keep them safe. There's a moral, ethical, legal responsibility, and it just makes sense. So you also want people coming in and taking things, physical
Right.
things, intellectual property, destroying things, or getting, spying on you. So that's sort of the traditional view of access control, where you want to keep people out because you don't want them to hurt your people, have access to your things, to be able to destroy or sabotage things. But the new generation of access control is as concerned with who's inside and getting the right people inside as it
Right.
is keeping people out, because you can't do business if you're keeping everybody out. Obviously, if your store, you got to keep the door open for at least, to a certain extent. If you're a jeweler in a high risk area, maybe you have access control on your door so you don't let in someone who's going to rob you or whatever. But the new wave of access control is tied to building management systems. So you can tell who is doing what in your building, who's coming in your building, what they're doing, where they're going, what resources they're using, how much power, how much water, that kind of stuff. They can all be measured, and it's tying in with building management systems. So you've gone from sort of safety on the one end to oh, let's maximize the tenant experience and leverage efficiencies from how we use resources in a building. And it all ties to access control.
Are most access control systems like cameras, or are there other stuff that people might not be aware of?
Yeah, access control systems tend to be um, anything that protects you from or prevents someone from getting inside or keeps you inside is access control. So the very basic access control is a door with a lock, right?
Right.
It's not fancy access control. It could just be a mechanical lock that we all have, in our house wherever we turn a key. And at the higher levels, it could be electronic systems that use cards, that use your phone for access. They could use your fingerprints or your face or any other, and that could be based on a localized system, or it could be on the cloud, so you can open doors or access places from anywhere. And I can say, okay, I want Mackenna to be able to get into this door during these hours for these reasons. And so I can program it that way for my home or for whatever on a cloud-based system. And I will be able to create permissions for specific people for at specific hours, at specific access levels, and so on. Cameras tie into those systems. Generally,
Right.
they're not considered necessarily access control, but they're supplement the access control. So if you're trying to break into a door and I see some activity, I can call up a camera and say, okay, that person is not supposed to be here, or that's who it is. They're having trouble with their key. Let's let them in or whatever, or let's not let them in. So it, cameras integrate with access control systems and they can be part of it, but they're not central components of access control.
Okay. I like what you mentioned about being able to program people to be able to access different areas. And I think that is very relevant in facilities management, obviously, especially in the healthcare sector. But I am someone who loses things. So,
Me too.
what do facilities risk having someone like me as an employee who tends to misplace their keys a lot throughout the day?
Yeah. So someone who misplaces, like, say if you have a badge, right? Like a lot of people misplace their badge, or they loan out their badge, or they forget it. A lot of companies will replace their badges with their phone, with apps on phones, because almost no one forgets their phones, right? Because everything is on your phone, right? And it's $1,000 or whatever it is,
Right.
$500, and your whole life is on it, and people are glued to it. So more and more companies are transitioning to mobile devices for everything, and it's also you don't have to keep replacing cards, and people won't forget the cards, and they won't wear out or whatever. So for someone like you, um, they could offer mobile as an option, or maybe even biometrics, where your face can allow you access, or your fingerprint, and it's very passive, especially with your face. You walk by a camera, and it does a one-to-one match. It has your um, data in it, the pattern of your face, and if you present your face, it'll match to the database and open the door. So that's one way. I mean, it's also a higher security way, and it's still a niche market. Most people are still using
Right.
cards and stuff, and then it's moving to mobile. So biometrics, higher security, or kind of specific uses, but it's becoming more mainstream.
The risk of sounding like a crazy person or maybe a boomer, because I like that you mentioned phones and biometrics. I have recently joined the iPhone gang, and nothing has made me more upset than this eye verification or the face identifier. I don't know what it's called, but because it never works for me, but it also makes me uneasy a little bit. What are some ways that facility managers can get people on board with stuff like that?
First of all, you can you can have people let people opt out, right? Because
Yeah.
people are always going to want to opt out. Say, I just want a card or I want some other way. And generally, unless you've like completely ripped out your old system and put in a new system, and even if you do that, even these new systems will have sort of a legacy ways of access control. You don't have to do the fancy biometrics, or whatever, because a lot of people are like you. There's always a minority of people who are like, I don't feel comfortable, even though it's your face isn't out. It's like not pulling faces from the wild, right? You're registering
Right.
it. It's not really your face, it's a pattern, right? But
Mhm.
they should be open with, they should explain what it is, right? Like it's your not really your face being matched anywhere. It's not going anywhere. It's just one-to-one pattern matching, and that you can opt out if you want. And they should
Mhm.
allow you to do that, and they should be upfront about it. And that's what most successful implementations do, because yes, there are many people who are like just they just it gives them the ick or whatever, That's probably the
Yeah,
wrong use of that word.
it gives me the heebie-jeebies a little bit. And it's not like I know that it's so hypocritical because I am on like every social media platform. So like my face is out there, it's already being used for stuff. It's already they got me. So I don't know why looking into my phone camera, I'm like, oh, I can't believe my eyes are being identified like this. But I understand it is a little bit more secure than it because you could easily like take someone's card from them or like you said, my phone's always in my hand basically. So I'm not gonna lose that. That was a lot of money.
Now, I'd be surprised if your phone is looking in your eyes, because that's much more difficult to do. I mean, it might be, but usually it's getting your facial pattern. It's facial
Yeah,
recognition with the iPhone. But eyes are another biometric, and um there's iris recognition, and I believe there's also like corneal recognition. There's a couple other types that are people are a lot less eager to do, because it's like I don't want something shining in my eye or whatever. That's weird.
right.
It's gonna affect my vision or whatever. Even it doesn't, but it seems like it could. So yeah, that's perfect. And I've said to my kids, I have daughters who are 21 and 24, and they're like, "Oh, you're all over social media and everything," but it's hard to say to somebody, okay, use your face for this and not for that. I completely understand people have different levels of comfort with exposing themselves to different kinds of technology, and you're comfortable with, wherever your presence on whatever social media, but not having your iPhone like, you know,
Right.
have your face in it. I completely understand that.
Right. And maybe I'll get it to work one of these days. I don't
Hmm, hmm.
it's definitely an operator error at that point. But Mike, what risks do facility managers often underestimate when access control systems are outdated or poorly managed?
The biggest risks when they're outdated, then they're not going to work well, right? The technology is easily spoofed, right? So someone can create a card that, if you have an old protocol, they can easily create their own and get in. But a much more so, and there's two kind of follow-on things from that. One is if the access control system doesn't work or is inconvenient, people will bypass it. People will prop open doors. Um, People will wedge it open. People will hold it for other people. It won't be a security measure anymore. It'll be an inconvenience. And
Right.
it will erode respect for your whole security program, which is a much bigger issue than, a faulty door here or there. It's like it becomes an obstacle rather than something that should be a benefit and should be, a safety measure. So if that you're leading down the slippery slope if you don't upgrade, update, maintain the system, then not only are you exposing yourself and opening up your staff for, to threats or your office to or facility to intrusions, then you're undermining your whole security department and undermining the faith that your staff and clients have in your security system and the way you treat and value security.
Right, because I think I know I've said this several times on this podcast that I care a lot about my safety, and it's mostly because I've started writing about facilities management. Everything is a danger. And
Yeah,
um,
it is.
but other people don't think like that. So maybe it's just a naivety that they think that they're always safe. What happens when that trust is lost? How can they earn it back?
Earn it back by, I'm a big believer in transparency and communication and getting buy-in from your employee population or your client population before you do something. So if you have like a place that's the doors are half open or like the locks are broken, there's a theory called broken windows. It's an old theory where if you don't maintain a facility or property, i.e., the windows are broken and you don't fix them, then no one else will value the property either, and it'll fall into disrepair and it'll attract the wrong kind of attention. Like people think they can do dastardly deeds there, it becomes a scene of crime. And that was one of the big reasons why New York in the 1990s sort of had this, like, let's take away those sorts of things, let's spruce it up and create something that it doesn't look like we don't care, and people will start to respect the city. And there's arguments of how well it worked. But in the 90s, crime dropped in New York City dramatically. And a lot of it is attributed to, like, they took, they brought people who do the squeegees, like they were less apparent, right? Subway turnstile jumpers on subways, they cracked down on, like, and things like signs of decay in the city were kind of washed over and cleaned up, and things were maintained. So that's the first step. And then you get people to buy in to your approach that security is serious. It's for the employees' own good. It's for their safety. It's for their well-being. It's for the organization's own good. And listen to them and say, hey, we want security to be a benefit, not a hindrance. How do you use it? Um, what are your pain points? Why, do you need to, use a certain door to get out that's where it would be inconvenient to come in another door. So maybe we could, put a control on that door so you can come in and out. You want to work with your people, respect them, listen, and show them that, you want to see to their well-being, but also make it feasible for them to do their work and have a convenient, work experience.
Right. Do you think access controls should be, I'm trying to think of the best way to word this, but like almost subtle in a sense that people shouldn't really know that they're there? Or should it be kind of like in your face?
Interesting question. I think for deterrence, you don't want people, you know, thinking they can get into your facility when you don't want them there, right? That's so in most senses, I would think you would want an obvious sign that, or an obvious display that there's an access control, um, and that you can't get in. This is not an easy target for you. There might also be subtler displays to work in with the architecture, or you may have you may be in a facility or in a kind of business where it's very high touch for the client or the customer, and some of the access control features are more subtle, or they're sophisticated or whatever. But generally, so it's hard to paint with a broad brush here, but generally, um, you the key, or probably the most important thing, is to show that people who you don't want in can't get in, right? I mean,
Right.
that's safety is the number one objective of access control, right? Keeping your people who are inside safe.
Right. You mentioned before about how facility managers can collect data from this, from access control systems. What can they use that data for?
They can use it to create efficiencies. So, for example, if if you're using a building and there's nobody in a certain room or nobody in parts of the building at a certain time, why do you need to keep it at 72 degrees? Why do you need to keep the lights on? Why do so why do you need, or whatever? You can um, you can reduce the temperature, you can reduce energy expenditure, lighting, et cetera, and gain and over multiple facilities. It sounds like, okay, we'll save a couple dollars here or there, but over time, multiple facilities, that could be tens of thousands of dollars. Also, you can track usage for tenant experience. So say there are certain conference rooms that people like to use, and you can say, okay, through the property technology system app via and through which access control is connected, or it could even anchor a prop tech system, you can see which are favored rooms. So you can say, all right, this is how we can, if there are different groups that want to use it, here's how we can, organize things so it's not chaotic. There's not competition for a certain room. You could even create sources of revenue. So if you have say you have a commercial facility and all the traffic is going one way, and you do wayfinding or um, movement of people, because sensors can track how many people assemble somewhere, which way they're moving, which resources they use.
Mm.
Say, this is a good place. We should have a vending machine here. Everybody collects here. We should have a store here. We should have some other way that we can monetize the fact that there's so many people here or whatever. So
Oh,
those are
yeah.
just a couple of different ways that um, both commercial and residential facilities are using that sort of data.
That is smart. If our facility manager in our building right now is listening, please put a vending machine
There you
in our
go.
hallway. In our hallway, I would love that. I don't
Hmm.
know how I keep on ending up at places with no vending machines, but use the data. I have to use my fob. I walk all around this building,
There you go. There you go. There's
and
a
that
case in point.
yes. See, listen to me. I am the use case
Hmm.
right here. But Mike, what lessons can facility managers learn from access control failures that you've seen in real life scenarios?
Great question, because I just dealt with two situations in the past 2 days where there were access control failures.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So in one of them, there was a firm, um, a company that was on a floor of a high rise, and the base building security, so the security for the building as opposed to the company itself, which was only on some floors of the building, were checking IDs and everything, and people were coming through turnstiles, and somebody piggybacked or tailgated behind an authorized user, and an alarm went off. But there were so many people pouring in that that the guards didn't hear it or didn't respond because they were dealing with other people.
Right,
And the person the intruder got in, and it was one of these elevators where you don't actually push a button, like, or you
right,
do, but you can't push a button inside. It just brings you to the floor. It's
right.
pre-programmed. So the person walked in, got into an elevator, got off where it opened, and started wandering around the building, and got into
So
some,
scary.
yeah, different floors, different areas. So tailgating, huge issue, right? And being
Yeah.
alert to people, um, especially in large, busy areas, they can do a
Hmm.
lot of damage, right?
Yeah.
Um, with the other issue that I dealt with, was in a large headquarters, and um, they so access control isn't just, okay, there's a door, there's a lock on it. It should be in layers and concentric circles. All
Okay.
security is sort of very layered. So if you come into like an office park, so I don't, where you work, you might drive into a parking lot, right? And then you
Mhm.
get out of your car, you might open the front door, walk into a an elevator, and then get up to your floor, and then only at your floor is there access control, right? That's one level layer. That isn't great, right? It's better than nothing, but access control should start from the out from outmost and move in and be commensurate with sort of where the assets lie. So you might walk otherwise drive in and there's a gate and you have to use your card to key in or whatever. Gate opens, you park your car, you go up
Right.
to the front door, it's locked. You have to either use your card or someone has to let you in from the front desk. You get to the front desk, they have to approve you, badge you in. You go in through turnstiles again with your card. You go to the elevator, again you need to use a card or some sort of code. You get up to your
Right.
floor, another layer, right? And then once you get into your facility, your your floor or your your area, there might be certain rooms that you can't access. Offices that might each have their own access control. Certain rooms like server rooms or other valuables are kept. Conference rooms. So that's something like just saying, putting in one access control and then saying, oh, it's good for everything. It's not. I mean, you don't have to have 100 layers of access necessarily for everything, but just slapping one there and saying, okay, in one place, like at the front door and saying, okay, or inside the front door and saying, we're good. That's that's rarely sufficient. So
Right. At first, it kept on going. I was like, "Oh, that just sounds like overkill, all the layers of safety."
it
But
might
then you
be,
mentioned, but then
yeah,
you mentioned the guy tailgating and just
yeah,
roaming around the halls, and that freaked me out.
yeah.
So I think I'd rather have overkill, and this could just be the mom in me that I would much rather be overkill than ever put myself at risk or put other people at risk because I would like to think that people are sane, but like I've seen a Bo Mitchell presentation. I know that people can be crazy and do whatever and hurt other people. And like you said, safety is imperative. That has to be the number one mission of facility managers. And I think outsiders who aren't familiar with the industry don't understand how much the facility managers care about their safety.
Hmm. Facility managers have a critical role. Facility managers often are have security foisted upon them because
Mhm.
large corporations, even large corporations, often the facility manager is responsible or the head of real
Right.
estate is responsible for security. And then when you get to smaller companies, especially building centered organizations, like you have one building, one facility, or one office, that really becomes part and parcel of facilities managers. So, and then they have to work. If you're a facility manager for a building and you have tenants, you are responsible for everything, but not, you have to work with the client to protect the client spaces. So there's a lot of nuances and ins and outs there, and it's a difficult job and it's a very important job. And that's just one of them. I mean, their main job is facilities, not security,
Right.
right? So it's it's a big role. It's an important role.
Right? They have to wear so many hats, and it's almost unfair because I feel like some people think that like safety is just like a small thing that people need to consider. And if we have learned anything from this conversation, it's huge. It should be number one.
I worked with a building that was a scene of an attack, a terrorist
Um,
attack,
oh
and
dear.
the facility manager came in, and it wasn't their fault at all. Facility manager was a contractor, though, right? And only came in occasionally. And a security professional who was brought in afterwards walked the whole scene, walked the whole facility with this facility manager and said, sort of gave him training on security and said, like, here's their paint cans stored here. Like, why are their paint? This is a hazard. They went up to the roof and they said, there's all sorts of things up here that can blow around and affect the HVAC system. You could take down the HVAC system. There are doors that are unlocked, and this person was just, a like a fractional facility manager brought in, contract, and really was enlightened, like how much security they're responsible for security, just sort of these little things like how doors open and close, how people can access buildings from the garage or whatever, and not, come up through staircases. And this security professional actually kind of gave him the and said, and it was a young guy, young facility manager. He said,
Right.
you have to take ownership of this. You have to
Mhm.
be the guy, right? And security now is, especially with a place that had been attacked, it's now your number one priority.
Mhm.
So facility managers are being put in those sorts of situations.
Right. We all have to view facilities as, or the buildings as our baby, because you'll do anything to protect your baby. And so you do anything to protect your building and protect the people inside it, because you never know. You never know what can happen.
I think that's well put. You're exactly right.
Okay. I know that we are running out of time, Mike, so I just have one last question for you. But if a facility manager could improve just one aspect of their access control strategy today, what would you recommend and why?
Good question. Let me give it some thought. Just one aspect. Um, I would make sure that the facility manager communicates with the clients, with tenants, or with the whoever's occupying the building, why access control is in place, works with the tenants to create the right balance of access, security, and safety, and that none of these things are just done automatically. They should be the result of a risk assessment. So if you're out in the middle of the desert, right, and you live in a hut in the desert, do you really need access control? Probably not,
Right.
right? There's nothing, no one there to take it, or you don't have anything valuable. Risk is always a function of vulnerability, um, vulnerability, and the probability and the value of whatever might be taken. So there's an equation, right? If any of those are zero, there's no risk, right?
Right.
Because zero times anything is zero. So usually it's almost never the case that it's zero, but they should be able to do a risk analysis and articulate and work with the clients why why access control is necessary, where it's necessary, and how and why it's implemented. So it shouldn't be just like, oh yeah, we have access control as everyone else does. It should be able to be person be able to explain it and accommodate the customer while keeping the facility safe.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Michael, or Mike. I know we talked about this,
That's all good. All good.
but I learned a lot. And once again, I am going to have a talk with my boss to see how we can make this place more secure. But is there anything else you would like to add?
No, anybody who wants to reach out and they have an access control or facility management slash security question, I'm happy to I'm happy to talk.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mackenna. It was a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for listening to the Facilities in Focus podcast. Facilities in Focus is a product of the facility market, which houses FacilitiesNet, building operating management, facilities maintenance decisions, and healthcare facilities today. Thank you to our sound and video editor, Paul Ellertson. Thank you to Morgan Johnson for designing our logo. Thank you to Dan Welton, Dave Lubach, Dan Hounsell, Jeff Warden, Jill McDermott, and everyone else at Trade Press Media Group. For comments, or if you are interested in being a guest on Facilities in Focus, please email us at fnpodcast@tradepress.com.